All right, good. So we'll start the recording then. So I welcome everybody to what the WebAssembly's filter meeting for the week of Monday, August 23rd. Happy Monday, everybody. Good. I hope your Monday is going better than mine. All right. So for those that are on the call, please do drop your name into the meeting minutes. You will be, that'll be at least 5-10 minutes of internet fame when you do. Also, speaking of internet fame, we end up publishing our YouTube, our meeting recordings on YouTube. So, so this will be up there soon. If now's the right time to call for topics. So we've got one topic today, which is great. It's a meaty topic. But what else? Do other people have items to go over? I didn't copy from down below since last we met. I know we had some spillover from last time we met. So take a moment now, go and review. So Utkarsh, we had a topic with you last time. I don't see anything for this week though. So I'm hoping there's progress. Meghana, I think your PR for URLs, I think it merged. I don't know that I've seen it in there, so it might be good to follow up, make sure that that's working. Is Soham on the call? So anyway, now is the time to get the topics listed. So go ahead and take a moment, get your topics there. I'm gonna go ping a couple of people to join while everyone works on that. Great, okay. So Soham is with us, good. Utkarsh, do you not have a topic this week?
No, there is no such update on, actually, I've created the issue, but there are no further details that are present in the issue. So no update on last week's topic.
Okay, okay. Okay, while we're here getting ready, kind of getting organized for this week, let's lay out what next week looks like as well. So next week's topics, Soham or Utkarsh, if you think that next week is that we might have something to review there, let's get that queued up. All right, so Soham's got a topic. So Meghana, Surya Shankar, Gaurav, no updates this week. KK, no updates. Okay.
Like I have some updates, but I don't think it's complete though. Like I'm kind of stuck.
Okay, good. Yeah, put it down as a topic. Let's get you unstuck. Let's unstick you. Unstuck you.
Lee, my PR is open right now. It's not merged yet. You mentioned that you were facing to while you build it, so we're just waiting for your update.
Okay.
Once it's merged, I'll do the pattern.
Okay, Meghana, I actually could. Oh, I couldn't really hear you actually, but can you put it down as a topic, whatever you're talking about?
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah, sure.
All right, good. And Ashish is with us. Good. Okay. All right. Getting some topics down. The first was, so, and Gaurav, no update this week then. Okay. So still no bulk delete on filters, I assume. Okay. All right. Well, let's, oops, that was the wrong button. Let's get going. So Navendu, you've got the first one. Do you want to take it away? You want to take people through the design spec?
Yeah, certainly. So the design spec is in the chat if you want to check it out. So Meshery has these new artifacts called patterns, filters, as well as applications. These are currently available through the Meshery provider as well as the local provider. So what this design spec aims to deliver is to use Meshery as an artifact repository. So when a user, so the use case is basically that when a user first installs Meshery, they should have access to a set of sample filters, sample patterns, and as well as sample applications. So we already have sample applications uh, in the current version of Meshery that is the users are able to Meshery already comes with some sample applications like the book info application, the bookstore application, emoji voter application. So these applications come pre-packaged with Meshery, and users can directly deploy or onboard these applications onto their service mesh. So what this spec aims to do is do something similar for patterns, WASM filters, as well as applications as a separate construct. And so there are some constraints with this design. That is, we should, so uh, the main point is here is that we will be packaging these sample patterns, filters, and applications into Meshery. So when the Meshery server is built, these sample files will be fetched, and it will be part of the actual build, and so that when a user installs Meshery, it can automatically it is automatically with them, so they don't have to download anything, or they don't have to import anything from uh, from a URL or something. So that would also enable air gap support, and it should also be that the user can control what sample applications or what sample artifacts they have, even if we give them prepackaged patterns, filters, or applications. It will they should basically have the power to delete or modify these files, and we should persist that modification as well. Okay, wait. So the overall goal here is to can be defined in 2 steps. Basically, the first step is to these files, basically fetch these files and bundle them with the Meshery server builds. And when Meshery first starts, we should import these files into Meshery so that the user can actually use these artifacts right out of the box. So those are the 2 steps that we have. And the other constraint is, as I mentioned, the air gap support. So basically, if we are bundling these files with the Meshery server build, it should automatically be supporting air gap deployments. So users would not have to connect to internet to get this working. Yeah, right. And the other constraint I mentioned with persisting changes they make to sample patterns. So if you are bundling this, with Meshery image, what could happen is every time the user updates Meshery or restarts Meshery, these sample applications could be updated, but the user could have modified these files as well. So this is a something that we might need to look into in the future. So we should also provide the user the ability to make changes to the sample applications or the sample filters or the sample patterns as well. That's pretty much it. The spec is in draft stage. It still needs some iteration to figure out how exactly we will implement it. But I see some changes, some edits already in the spec. But yeah, if you have any questions, please ask them. Or if you need any changes, please raise them now.
Who's got feedback? So Rudraksh and Utkarsh, the two of you might be closest to this.
I think I need to go through a bit.
Yeah, actually, I'm also going through it.
Okay, very good. All right, fair enough. Let me give you guys some things to think about, some stuff to think about. So this particular design spec could be alternatively named, potentially. Like in part, what this begins, the design spec starts to speak to and sort of unravels into is content management within Meshry. So Meshry is an extensible platform. Meshry allows users to bring in their own quote unquote content. Okay, the part of the prologue here begins to define what's meant by content. So, and it needs to define a couple of definitions for those that aren't familiar. So almost all of you, or most of you, have signed into Meshry before you've deployed Meshry. The first interface, web-based interface that you see is one of a choice of provider. Like, do you want to, which provider would you like to use? There's a built-in provider called none, or called the local provider. It's called none, I think, in the dropdown because it's intended to convey that really, like, there's not a lot of guarantees there. If you look at that interface, it explains what a provider is and what you get with the none provider versus other providers. The common things you get with a provider are identity, persistence, or storage. And so just like you might, so, okay, well, part of that storage then, as you connect to a provider, whether it's the local provider or a remote provider, that provider might have it might have content. It might have like your user preferences. It might have filters that you've created, patterns that you've made, applications that you've uploaded, your Kubernetes apps, or to facilitate quick time to value, so that people who are just learning Meshry or just learning service meshes or don't really know what the power of the tool is, that there would be some content resident or seeded inside of, out of the box, so to speak. Now, the quote unquote out of the box experience is both a combination of Meshry server itself, like Meshry, the bits that are released. Also, if someone uses the local provider, those bits for the local provider are built into Meshry server itself. The remote providers, they're remote, they're written separately and run separately, and they may offer up different types of content, but both to facilitate quick time to value and an understanding of what Meshry does and how to manage service meshes. This spec is proposing that there should be any number of filters, service mesh patterns, applications, maybe performance profiles, like common benchmarks, like any amount of these that are predefined and readily available for users to use. Now, the word sample comes in here when we talk about this type of content. Like all of those types of things can be, actually, Navendu, if you scroll up to the design prologue, there is the definition, a distinction and a definition of like user-produced content, like what is content, first of all, and what is user-produced content, what is provider-produced. They overlap. Like right now, the way that they can distinguish is that when you're a user, you're using Meshry, you run some performance tests, you have results for those performance tests. Those, you produce those results as a user. The provider didn't say, here's some tests that have been run and here's their results. Like that might be interesting to you as a benchmark, but that's generally not what's going on. Like you're running the test, you're generating the results. For, and you might also be bringing your own filters, your own patterns, your own applications, your own content, which is, very much intentionally, you should be. Meshery is designed for you to bring that. If when you go to run Meshery, there's nothing in there, there's no filters, there's no patterns, there's no applications, it takes the user a while longer to grok what this functionality is, and to also, it takes longer to get to the value of what Meshery can deliver. So there are, as a community, we've been working on, I think we've got like 6 or 7 different filters that are published. Good. Hey, why don't we make those readily available? Like irrespective of what provider someone chooses to use. Why don't we make those readily available? Why don't we seed some content? Why don't we have some example pattern? We've been working on patterns. They're publicly published. Why are those not readily available initially? I mean, they are readily available to Meshery. A user can go in and import them, but they have to take that step. So why don't we just have those available out of the box? And that's the proposal that Navendu is writing here, is to basically say, let's facilitate quick time to value, provide users with quote unquote sample content. I would say that it's seed content because the filters that are provided, the patterns that are provided, they're not samples to the extent that they're not production worthy, that they're not highly useful. So we have to be careful with that potential misnomer. While they are sample filters that are provided as a sample for you to use, like I think the use of that word sample is probably doesn't do them justice. Rather, these are the out of the box functionality, the out of the box content, the seed content to get you going, and maybe it's all that you need. Good. So that's a large part what the design is about. Part of what happens is there's kind of, so if we go to design goals, that's the goal number 1 is like facilitate short time to value, offer seed content. Goal number 2 is to, begin to consider, but consider air gap deployments. And air gap deployments have something in common with this design goal of seeding content. And that is that if there isn't content that's seeded, if there aren't out of the box filters and patterns and applications, then you got to import them into Meshery. And so you either need to bring your USB stick and walk up to Meshery and plug it into Meshery and load up the, your filters in there, or you need to connect, use the network to connect. And so in air gap deployments, you bring your USB stick, and it would be nice if people didn't have to walk around with the USB stick to facilitate the air gap deployment. If you're not familiar with an air gap deployment is, that means that you're deploying Meshery into an environment that does not have an internet connection. There is no internet connection. So the thought of like dynamically retrieving a filter and loading it in from a URL, well, that URL has to be local, like local to that Meshery deployment. That's what air gap means. Okay, understanding that there are any number of users that run infrastructure and want to run Meshery in that type of environment, seeding content will help with overcoming some of those air gap challenges. If if out of the box content is available and is right there in the box, then people don't have to go get their USB stick. They don't have to go figure something out. So that's good. So we should think about that, air gap deployments and the considerations there. The third thing that this spec touches on is honoring user customizations, which is to say that as a user, you might have uploaded, you might have taken some of the the patterns that are provided out of the box. Like as we go to do this, as we go to implement this spec and provide people with any number of filters, any number of patterns, that if they want to change the configuration of those, change the configuration of the filter, upload their own filters, maybe delete the existing filters because they don't like them, they're not going to use them. Well, then on upgrade, what happens to those customizations? do we just overlay the same seed content on top and therefore eradicate, remove their customizations? Like, well, we should ideally not, like ideally that's probably not a good user experience. Like, or if that's going to be it's probably not an ideal user experience. And if it's going to be the experience, then you probably need to make that really apparent to the user and make sure that they understand what's about to happen to them and happen to their customizations, because otherwise they're going to get upset and punch their monitor. And that's the last thing we want Meshry users to do. We want Meshry to delight the user and for Meshry to say, well, hey, don't worry about it, upgrade with confidence. Meshry will have this behavior, whatever that behavior is, and it needs to be described in this spec. Could be different things. It could be big fat warning sign comes up saying you're about to overwrite your customizations, or no need for a warning sign. It just doesn't overwrite customizations. Like, so there's different ways to handle it. That's the overarching objectives that are defined here. And in the way that the reason that we're couching, we're defining a couple of things. We're defining the fact that there's content, which builds upon the fact that Meshry is a platform. It's an extensible platform. You can bring content. Content, like that word or not, like that's a generic term for describing the variety of things that we've just been talking about, specifically filters. And that's, this design spec is is written in context of filters, because the question is just that, like, there are no, like, many of you that want to go use the filters functionality and lay down a custom filter in your service mesh deployment, you might be saying, where do I get some filters? Where do I get my hands on those? Do I have to go write those? Like, you don't have to. There are some that are available to you. Okay, so why are we bringing providers into this? Like, why don't we just bake those publicly available filters into a given release of Meshry? It's like, well, that's kind of what we are. We're basically saying, we're basically proposing that is what be done, but that baking it in and putting it right behind the provider interface means that when someone uses the local provider, like, they have to make that choice. They're in one of two modes. They're either using a local provider or a remote one. And having this content behind that interface means that the provider, a remote provider can deliver any number of filters, however many they want. So if we just hard code and bake those in, it becomes fragile, not flexible, not dynamic. Now, we are going to bake them in to the extent that they would be packaged and available out of the box for anyone using the local provider. And they would be resident, those filters would be literally inside of the same Docker image. And there might be more filters available on a subsequent release of Meshry. Having them behind the provider's construct is what we need to do for all content, because it needs to be clear to users what they're getting in terms of persistence of that content. How long will that content be around and live? Depends on the provider. That's what a provider offers. Cool. Okay. So I went off for a little while, but subsequent to that, the design spec is a great draft. It's in draft. It needs a bit of refactoring, refinement, and is going through that. And that's what you all are encouraged to go look at. One of those open challenges, I haven't read the whole spec myself, but an open challenge is like how to honor those customizations. If someone takes an existing, like a filter that you've given them that's out of the box, they change the configuration, they're running one version of Meshry, they go to update to the next version. Well, in the next version, we actually have a whole new, better filter, better, bigger, better, nicer, whatever it is, faster, whatever. So shouldn't the user get that newer, nicer whiz-bang filter? That's the same filter, it's just a different version. Oh, wait a second, I just said version. It's a different version of that filter. Maybe content needs to be versioned. That might be helpful, such that you can deliver to users new versions. So you might then say, if someone's upgrading to a new version of Meshry, if you want to deliver out of the box filters, if that their mesh-array deployment already has a filter that's at the same version number as the one that you're about to provide, then maybe don't overwrite the one that they have. Maybe honor their customization. So this is the food for thought. This is the things to do. I'm assuming what's proposed in here is that like to get some of that out of the box content is that at build time, the workflows that build mesh-array will retrieve that content and register it. Whoa, I just brought in a couple of new concepts like registering content. Who can tell me how we register, quote unquote, how we register content today? Meghana, I'm going to call you out because Meghana, you just got done delivering part of that.
Actually, I was away for a while. I missed what we were discussing. Could you just
okay? Yeah. No. Yeah, no. Fair enough. No problem. I went off and got coffee myself too. So, so Ashish, man, I just like there's no mercy on this Monday. I'm just calling people out. Like Ashish, any ideas to how you might register content? And yes, silence does mean that no, you don't have any idea. Did you have an idea?
Wait, I'm reading the spec right now.
Okay. So we'll skip. So okay. So no, not quite. All right. Fair enough. Gaurav, how about you?
I have to think more about that. For registering a particular, could you please repeat that thing?
Yep. Yeah. Registering a particular piece of content. So in this case, like a filter.
Okay.
Cool. So, all right. So fair enough. And so by the way, I'm harassing everyone in the best of ways, hopefully, just to kind of help reinforce everyone's understanding of what's going on. And so, yeah, we haven't tossed around the term register much. So, in that way, the question is a little bit unfair. And by the way, those that didn't answer the question, like A, you didn't hear it, so don't even sweat it. B, you didn't even get a chance to read the specs, so don't even sweat it. Like don't sweat it's not, I don't mean to make anyone feel uncomfortable in that way, only to like get your juices flowing, get some new noodles created in your brain, like to wake us up and to do some stuff. So the way that, like, if you think about content being managed in Mesh-array and people being able to upload their own content or import a pattern, upload a filter, they're like registering content with Mesh-array. So Mesh-array becomes aware of the fact that there is a pattern that a user might want to deploy. And so that pattern, that content becomes registered at that point with Mesh-array. Like it's in Mesh-array's database, or Mesh-array becomes aware of it so that, yeah. So, okay. So like there's this implicit process of registration happening. Like you can imagine, we haven't gotten there yet, but we will. Like Mesh-array has a long roadmap, and it's not fully articulated because we have a hard enough time kind of getting through something like this, where we're trying to understand what do we mean by registration, much less what do we mean by policy-driven workflow or orchestration. Like that's a whole, like we desire to have gotten there last year. It just takes a long darn time to get to some of these things. And so registration and dealing with content means that there should be a finite state machine, an FSM. Everybody recall what a finite state machine is? And if not, maybe some of us haven't gotten to it yet. Some of us have been there. It sounds like a big old word, and it's not really. Not a big concept, but I'm not going to describe what a finite state machine is. We should have a diagram that defines a finite state machine for the management, for the life cycle of content. That will be helpful to ensuring that we do achieve goal number 3, which is honoring user customizations. So that, yeah. And part of that will define registration, like how the state by which a piece of content can flow through. Is it, so, yeah. So I won't, I said that I wouldn't describe it, so I won't. Okay, all right, good. So we described, what do we mean by registration? What do we mean by honoring user customizations? Good. What do we mean by content? Yeah, okay, we gave some examples of those. We gave some examples of the fact that some content is user produced, some is provider produced. Okay. We said, well, why do providers come into this? Like, shouldn't we just package it out of the box? It's like, okay, well, we kind of described why we would want for that to be provider specific, because Meshery is a platform that's extensible and providers might want to deliver their own filters to users. Also, if users upload filters, how are those remembered and retained? Like, where are those stored? Well, the provider offers that. Like the Meshery's goals, one of it's in the charter of Meshery and the vision of the thing. It's not dissimilar from, well, one aspect is not dissimilar from Prometheus. What does Meshery have to do with metrics? Well, in this way, the Prometheus project and Meshery are the same. You know what's really interesting about, one interesting factoid about Prometheus is that, so Prometheus, if you're not familiar, like, it collects a bunch of metrics, tons of metrics, so quickly, so fast. It collects a lot. They change so frequently. The environments are ephemeral. Things are coming and going all the time. It's got to so the way that it does storage of metrics is like at the core of one of the core capabilities of Prometheus. One of the ways that it does it. So it needs to do it efficiently. It'll burn through a physical hard drive fairly quickly in a large Kubernetes environment. Oh yeah, you can. And there's tests out there that show it. So the way that, they've rewritten the storage model a couple of times. It's interesting. They've, sort of gotten about as small as you can get it, as compact as you can get it. And anyway, so for as front and center as storage is and storing metrics is to Prometheus, what's one of not the project's goals? This project does not deliver persistent storage. Like, that is an anti-goal. This project doesn't do it. They say storage is hard. We're not doing it. We're facilitating the collection of metrics, the writing them to disk, whatever disk you bring, whatever storage that is, they facilitate that. But beyond that, it's like, hey, that's in your, that's not, they don't want to deal with it. Consequently, other projects have popped up. So is Aman on? Yeah. So Aman can, like, he's sitting here, he's following this. He's like, yeah. Aman, you want to tell us about some other projects that have popped up to, provide persistent storage?
Yes. So I guess you're talking about Thanos. So there are some other projects like Thanos and Cortex, which arise around the Prometheus ecosystem, because there were some drawbacks or some limitations which Prometheus has, which, like Lee mentioned right now, that it does not provide long-term storage capability. So for that, we have other tools of other tools like Thanos, which does that stuff of providing the long-term storage. It has a sidecar and a complete thing. So the complete detail might not be good to share it right now, but yeah.
I'm on the spot. That's fantastic. That's perfect. Yeah. So storage of metrics, it's like super important to the project, and yet this project says, hey, we're not going to solve that problem. That's hard. You go solve. And so my point of giving this example is to say, for Meshery, well, it's not a dissimilar story. It's like Meshery is trying to help you manage cloud native infrastructure, particularly this newfangled service mesh layer and all that it can do. Good God, my goodness, that's enough unto its own. Trying to persist your filters and applications, your patterns and stuff, and then provide it to you and guarantee all that based on what storage you want to use. And let's draw the line. So we drew the line, but we also acknowledged, like, oh, it's going to be a pain in the rump if people have been running performance tests for a while. They've been benchmarking their result, baselining their environment, looking at the results, and then they're trying to baseline like, hey, last month, how am I doing last month to now? Wait a second, what happened to last month's results? Oh, they're gone. Oh, hey, they're going to want long-term storage. Let's provide an interface behind which a storage provider, a remote provider from Esri, that's what we call them. Because these providers don't just deliver in Meshry, they don't just deliver storage, they can deliver other things like filters, like what we're talking about now. So if you want to kind of grok more about the concept of a provider, this is an excellent place to, So anyway, that's in part like Prometheus and Meshry drew a similar line. Prometheus has, oh God, I think it's actually called remote storage providers. I think it's the a remote storage provider. You can write your own. I've had my teams in the past write, read-write remote storage providers for some of the things we were doing with Prometheus. But point is, like, there's that line. That's the point. So my goodness, I can talk. I apologize. I didn't realize it's been so long with me. So okay, I get that most of you are kind of just seeing this for the first time. You haven't any time to go through it. It's very fresh. It's still being written. Please jump in. Oh, look, Prav's all over it. Rubrok, nice. You guys are very good. Get in, ask some questions, learn some things, suggest some things. Some of this, it's fresh. So Nivendu, thank you very much for putting pen to paper on that. Does anyone else have comments on this before we go to the next topic? It's pretty neat, Nivendu and Rudraksh. I know you were thinking on this as well, that, yeah, all of a sudden this isn't just about filters. This starts to become, this is a big old consideration across Meshry. So pretty cool. Mr. Sonawane, I think you're up next.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. So just an update on editing filter configs. So we already have support for deploying or designing filters on MeshMap. But we didn't have support for editing the configuration for filters yet, because in last or maybe previous to that week's development meeting, I showcased that we could drop filters onto nodes, but the configuration tooltip that basically popped up wasn't editable for filters yet. And also I had shown that we could edit configurations for other workloads in general. But last week I found out that there was a small bug with regards to the whole tooltip and editing it. So just fixing that and also implementing it for filters also. Oh yeah. So as Lee is typing that, there are 3 ways. I guess, yeah, there are 3 ways in which users can configure filters. There is a configuration tab in the Meshry UI, which lets you upload and configure filters. There is MeshMap itself, where you can drag and drop your filters in Meshry CTL. I guess Navendu would be a better person who can answer that. That's all from my side.
Would anyone like to? So this is a good question. That certainly Meshry CTL has a filter command. You can do CRUD operate. Well, you can do create, read, and delete against your filters. Can you update them though? Can you do we have full CRUD?
Only I don't think we can update it. We can just create, delete, and list view. That's it.
Yeah.
Updating would be like changing the WASM file and uploading it again. How else could we?
Well, it might be that the binary, the filter itself, the binary, maybe it's the same, but maybe the configuration is different. Now that I open this can of worms, like I think it's a little bit of a can of worms because the configuration that you have for a filter, well, it may not be just as simple as like, here's a binary file and here's a small configuration string. That it may be deployment specific, or at the time that you go to apply the filter and you go to deploy it, that small configuration string, the binary stays the same. The configuration string, it might be deployment or application specific. And so I think there are some worms in that can, so that's something to be solved, but something that would require thought to be given. Is everybody else kind of seeing what I was just saying about there not being necessarily just one config per binary? Okay, well, I'll write it down so that and then I'll harangue everyone next week about the complexities there and how we should potentially go to solve them. So, okay. Well, moving on.
Yeah. So,
or actually, well, yeah, I'm sorry, Shankar, I apologize. Soham, a question for you. So you don't happen to have mesh map up, do you? I want to tease out that next set of interactions if we can. And it may be very straightforward that like when someone goes to apply a filter to a deployment, I think, there's, at least in the Istio environment, there's like, I don't know, 10 or 15 different configuration items, like, and questions for users to answer. Do you have that handy?
Yeah, I am afraid no, it's not running actually. I am not on my Ubuntu machine. I'm currently on my Windows machine.
Okay. Okay, no problem. I'll try to bring it up, but in the meantime, yeah, Surya Shankar, yeah, please continue.
Yeah, so currently what's happening is that when there's responses with multiple levels of nesting, like I'm unable to display it. Like I can use a for loop to check if it's an array and then just show it again. But if there is multiple levels, then it's getting kind of difficult. Like I can show you what I mean if I can share my screen.
Sounds great.
Yeah, so for example, this is returning a mesh-D pattern array, and if we go over there, technically this is also returning an array, and I'm having some troubles to getting that to display properly. I'm just going checking if it's an array and then just using a simple for loop, but we can't just add infinite for loops for multiple stuff, I guess. And another problem is that some stuff like these arrays, these are not getting generated properly. So the ID is coming kind of blank. The rest of the stuff is kind of working. So is there any other better way to do this than a simple for loop? So that's where I'm stuck at.
Cool. Yeah, I'm just waiting for others to chime in. It cannot be me that answers all the questions. Who's got who can help here? Okay. So, okay. Shayatan, Suhani, sounds like you're not able to help here.
Sorry, I was distracted. I didn't listen.
Sure. No problem.
Yeah. So what's going on is like when we have multiple levels of nesting, like look at this, an array of mesh-tree pattern, and if it also has some other array, like is there any simpler way to like display it? Like right now what's going on is like I'm just checking if it's an array and then just looping through it. But what if there are like multiple levels? Like that isn't working properly for me.
So instead of array, you can use response, or maybe I didn't get your question.
Like for example, look at this now. Now this is also like an object with multiple properties. Like, is there any way to like other proper way to like display these? Because right now like they're kind of like not working. Like for example, this is an array, but it's not getting like displayed properly. Like ideally, like for Swagger, like you just need to go to its definition, the struct, and then add a comment over there. But I believe like these are like libraries, and we can't just edit them.
Cool. So do you know, so do we know why we have an array? Why is an array being returned for the UUID?
I have no idea.
No, it's not an array. A UUID, so the arrays of mesh-tree parents, not of IDs. So UUID is just UUID. There's a single attribute for that. It is returned as a string.
Yep. Cool. Then keep going, Utkarsh. So like when a call is made to get patterns, if there's multiple patterns, there'll be an array of patterns. Is that it?
Yeah. So it would be an array of this mesh-tree parent struct. That's how we return more than one patterns.
Yeah, like that'll probably like fix this case, but I'm sure like there must be something that's returning an array, like some other API or something. Like that'll definitely make this patterns API work, but I'm sure like there'll be something like which returns an array at one point or the other.
Yep. So Surya Shankar, just to give context, part of your goal is you're writing up API docs.
Yeah.
And so as someone goes to get, this is for the REST API, right?
Yeah. This is for the get request.
Okay. So they do a get on the /pattern. And if the user has any number of patterns loaded, like there'll be an array that's returned of listing out all those patterns.
Like this is just a example. Like these are just static stuff. These are not dynamically generated. Like these are just generated from the Swagger annotations.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, once you are able to load up a pattern and then retrieve it, like yeah, capturing that output will be that example output will be even more helpful. Is your question then, hey, what's an ideal way to format the developer documentation?
Not like that. Like for example, I have like two problems right now, like two issues. Like first is that if we are returning anything like an array or object like this, then it's not getting generated properly in the Swagger documentation, and it's returning an empty string. You could say, like it's basically empty. So that's one problem, and the other is that uh, like if it's like this is kind of solved, but like if this was an array, like then like we would get stuck, like we wouldn't be able to do it properly because like if it's not able to formulate the question like properly right now. Basically, like some stuff are not getting generated, the like arrays and objects. Yeah, like that would be a simpler way to explain it.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts to offer up?
But they are not getting generated on the, basically, is it not getting
And
rendered, or
no,
they are
the
not?
swagger.yml, like it's simply not there.
Okay.
Like this and this.
Okay. Okay. So do we consider that that's a bug, or is this provider specific?
It could be that because Swagger is not generating, and it could be that the UID end SQL.map does not implement a certain interface which Swagger, that core Swagger tool is looking for. That can totally happen for SQL.map because that's something that we just created. I'm not sure why that would be happening for UID.UID because that's a properly maintained package. So most probably the thing that is happening is that GoSwagger is looking for something, a certain interface to marshal stuff, and it's not finding that for location, I mean, SQL.map and for UID.UID. So probably something we will have to look into. We can, even if that's the issue, we can fix it for SQL.map, but not for UID.UID. As Surishankar initially said, that is a library and not something that we actually maintain.
Yeah, like ideally to like add proper Swagger documentations, like this stuff should be added in this package too, instead of in this place.
Okay. Did you guys conclude?
Yep, not right, and like I'm not yet sure why that would be happening, because if that's the case, then time.time shouldn't work either, because that's just another struct, and we have defined example right on top of it. I'm not sure if like I don't think that would be present in Go compiler. So I still, there's still the hunch is that there is certain interface, certain marshalling interface that is missing. So probably can create an issue and look into it. We would be able to partially at least fix the issue if it's an interface related issue.
Yeah, like the only problems are when we are adding an example where it's an object, like object with multiple parameters and like an array. Like these are the only two cases like where I'm having some issues.
Yep, actually, I think time.time is also okay. Yeah, we can create an issue and track it probably.
I guess that's it. Like, should I stop my sharing?
Sure. Yeah, it sounds like you're on the verge of getting unstuck. Cool. Good. All right. Well, we're right at time. Just quick questions for Meghana and Pratish. Meghana, you were giving an update on this PR earlier. And I wasn't.
Yes, Lee. So, oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So it's a very small update. The PR is still open. You mentioned that you faced some issue while you built it earlier. So I think the reviewers are waiting for your update on that. I didn't see any other unresolved stuff there. So that's pretty much it. Once that is merged, I'll open a PR for the patterns and applications one. So that should close the other issues. Then I'll work on the special case. Okay.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. That's good. I wonder. Yeah, I didn't realize there was something you can check. Yeah. Okay. Maybe it's my environments. Is I get a missing configuration menu. That's weird. Which is what you just said. Okay. So then. All right. Good. Okay. Fair enough. Good. Yeah. Let's get this one merged. Then I think we're good to go. So that's great. Then your plan of action after that sounds great as well. So, all right. Then for Pratish, any update for you?
Yeah. So I'm completely new to the comment.
Oh yeah. You know what, Pratish? Actually, this is a great. That's a great one for the websites meeting. We're over time here, and so that has to deal with the layer5.io, the website itself. We should. Yeah, good suggestion. You just missed, or were you on the websites meeting a couple hours ago?
No, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I'll point you to those meeting minutes so you can get it teed up there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Nice. All right. Anything else before we wrap up today? Cool. Okay, good. So we've got at least one item for next week. Meghana, maybe you'll be on a roll, so you'll get like the other 2 upload by URL for next week.
Yeah, sure.
Nice. Yeah, a little copy and paste. Anybody else have items for next week? Or is it just have a follow-up to comments in this spec? Right. So maybe we can solidify and move forward. Am I missing anything? So hopefully the bulk delete, Gaurav, I would say if you don't get it by next week, let's swap that. Let's get you onto something else because otherwise I think you'll be swimming in it for probably too long. Okay. Cool. Okay. See everybody same time next week. Thank you all. Bye. Bye.